Linda, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean. It's fun to be on the show with you.
So let me ask you this. When you took over as administrator of the Small Business Administration, what kind of were the priorities that you set forth under a Trump administration that kind of really helped small businesses grow and allowed people to take out loans and start new businesses? What was it that you and the Trump administration brought to that job that might have been different?
Well, I can tell you it was really President Trump's policies. It was the fact that he wanted to lower taxes. He wanted to get rid of overburdensome regulations, and we focused on doing that. And it really was successful. I went all over the country. I went to every district office in every state. There were 68 district offices. And I toured small businesses when I was there. I did local press conferences. And I talked to the people on the ground. I said, tell me what will help you. Will the tax cuts help you in your business? And without a doubt, every single one of them said, clearly they would. And what would they do with those tax savings? Reinvest them in their companies, hire more people, and they could expand their businesses. So it really did lead to growth in the economy. And the whole process was incredibly successul.
How much do you think like your background as somebody who understood what it took to grow a business mattered? Like, could you say, yep, I went through that same struggle. I know what it's like to comply with all these regulations. Did that help, A, just in general, and B, with the credibility of addressing these small businesses?
Well, you know what was interesting? When the president-elect hadn't taken office yet, President-elect Trump asked me to come to Trump Tower in New York and talk to me about taking over as administrator of the Small Business Administration. He said, I've got a really novel idea. He said, I'd like to have somebody in place that's actually built a business and knows what it's like and can talk to the people on the ground. And when I would talk to small business owners and I would say, look, I've been in your shoes. I've been bankrupt. Once I lost everything, lost my home. My car was repossessed in the driveway. I know what it takes to work 24/7 when you're building a business. I know what it's like to lose it all and then have to rebuild it all. I know the impact of taxes, and not only the impact of taxes, but the uncertainty of what taxes you're going to have to be dealing with. How can you plan? How can you budget? And how is the regulatory environment going to impact what you're doing? I mean, if you recall, the Trump administration said that for every new regulation you wanted to put in place, you had to get rid of 2. And as it turned out, I think we got rid of between 8 to 10 regulations for everyone that was on the books. And it was just, it was terrific to see the business environment and the economy just really take off and grow.
You know, you mentioned the phone call you got from President Trump. I was around Trump Tower for a lot of the calls or the meetings. I wasn't for yours. How did that go down? I mean, did he just pick up the phone and call you, or had you guys been in touch? What was that like?
Well, he didn't pick up the phone and call me directly. There were some folks that I'd been working with. And don't forget, I've known him for about 25 years.
I was going to ask you, since you brought it up, let's take that back then. How did you get to know him?
Well, I got to know him. He actually was a big fan of WWE. He had come to some events at Madison Square Garden, and he invited us to join him for a Rolling Stones concert in New Jersey. And so we did that. And it was just fun. And WWE then had 2 or 3 of its big pay-per-view events from the casino in Atlantic City. And Donald Trump was a great business partner during that time. And we just had a lot of fun together. He appeared on some of the television shows. And we just had fun doing it. And the events were very successful. And then he was involved in a Battle of the Billionaires match for WWE, and the loser of that match had to get his head shaved by the winner of that match. And so Donald Trump was represented by a WWE wrestler, and Vince McMahon was represented by a WWE wrestler. And as you can imagine, Donald Trump's wrestler won, and Donald Trump, in the middle of the ring, right then and there, shaved Vince McMahon's head. So that was the Battle of the Billionaires.
Can you imagine if it had gone the other way?
There was no chance it was going to go the other way.
Can I just ask, what was that, when we are joking aside, was that preordained? Was that scripted, or was it legitimately like those two wrestlers were going at it and you saw who won?
Well, WWE is scripted entertainment.
What?
Yes.
I
So
didn't
it's
know. No, I'm just kidding.
scripted entertainment, lots of fun. In fact, the job description at WWE is to put smiles on people's faces.
Well, I imagine. I wonder how many people would have smiled if Donald Trump had his head shaved, because I think that would have been,
Well, it
looking
would have
back
been
on it now, considering all of the fun that Jimmy Fallon had with tussling with his hair. Can't imagine what it would have looked like with a buzz cut.
Well, I can tell you that it would have been a costly clause in the contract.
So
had something gone wrong, but nothing was going to go wrong. We knew that.
Right. So go back to this post-election interaction. Was it something that you sought out? Was it something that his folks or his team reached out to you?
Well, I let it be known that I'd be willing to serve in the administration if there was a role that the president felt would be good for me. And when he called the folks in my office and asked me to come and have the appointment with him, I didn't know what we were going to talk about. And so when we were sitting there, we were discussing it, he said, look, I really have a job I think would be tailor-made for you. And it would be something that we really, really need to have someone strong in small business administration. He was an incredible supporter of small business. And as a matter of fact, when he was pushing tax cuts and deregulation, I would often fly with him on Air Force One. We would be going to different venues, and he would be, promoting his tax cuts, et cetera, to different audiences. And he would always single me out, and he would say, ask me to stand and acknowledge that I was the administrator for Small Business Administration, and that we really did have the backs of small business, because after all, they are the backbone of the economy. And I actually learned a stat that I didn't know when I took over, and that is that over 99% of the businesses in this country are small businesses. And they contribute about 40% to our overall economy. So it's an amazing, amazing statistic.
It's interesting because I was thinking about this in advance of this interview, and I was thinking to myself, there's a real difference between someone like you and Trump, who's worked for a company, met a payroll, built something from the bottom up, versus Joe Biden, right? Which is, he's never had a private sector job. I mean, the guy literally got elected at 29 years old to the United States Senate and hasn't looked back since. And I think that clearly makes a big difference how you approach these businesses, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does. And having an understanding of the impact on the economy from small and big business. In fact, the other thing that President Trump would say when I was with him, he would always ask me, he'd say, Linda, let's make sure everybody knows that small business is big business in our country. And he's so incredibly right about that. And this, I'll be repetitive, in that he fully understood the impact of the value of small business and wanted to make sure that small businesses had the tools that they needed. We started apprenticeship programs, training programs for labor, making sure that the district offices around the country had what they needed in order to reach out to the local banks to make lending to small businesses easier. It's often thought that small businesses actually make the loans to, that the SBA makes loans to small businesses. But in fact, that's not the case. The banks guarantee the loan, and the SBA comes in and guarantees the loan, but the bank actually is the one who says whether or not this is a good risk for SBA. So it's a little bit different than how it's thought. So to work with the local banks to make sure that the local businesses had access to that capital was incredibly important.
When you mention a stat like that, and I think to myself, how many small businesses? Well, let me put it to you this way: as somebody who had grown a successful business, when you got to Washington, what were your impressions of an agency like the Small Business Administration, in the sense of, did you feel that they had the understanding of what small businesses actually go through, as someone who had been on the other side? Or were you like, these guys have no clue what it takes to actually run a business?
It was mixed. I believe that at the district office level, all of the directors that were the district office level fully understood because they were meeting with the small businesses. They were helping them, access their loans. The offices themselves had, former CEOs or other people who'd been in business who met with the entrepreneurs in their areas and would help guide them and develop their business plans and help them through the process of making their pitch, if you will, to the banks to get their access to capital. So I believe that all of the people on the ground had a real full understanding of what the small businesses in their areas were going through. It's a little bit different with the bureaucracy in Washington and in the agency offices who are, very tied up every day with, just getting the work done and not fully understanding what's going on in the field. It's a little bit like when I was a CEO at WWE. I would often, tell our marketing people and those who had other jobs in the company said, get out in the field, go in the stores and see how our product is displayed. If it's a licensed product, go to live events, feel the crowd, understand what's going on. Because if you don't do that, you can't have an appreciation for what the small businesses in those local marketplaces were going through. And so it was very, very important to have the local district office very much in touch with the local businesses.